You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday 15th of December 2014. Soldiers told not to yell at or use insulting words with terror suspects. Leads cabbies to be trained to help spot children at risk of sex exploitation. Spain, Madrid's Omar Mosque and Islamic Culture Centre was an ISIS jihadi recruitment hub. Islamic extremists use criminal gangs to enforce religious Sharia laws in Danish ghettos. Merkel condemns racism as Dresden anti-Islam marches grow. Pakistan arrests suspected South Asian Al-Qaeda commander. Australian authorities call for calm as Sydney rocked by hostage crisis. Thought for the day, the anti-social brigade. And finally, 2 for 1 Day Monday. UK News. Soldiers told not to yell at or use insulting words with terror suspects. Robert Spencer of Jihad Watch writes, "The effect of the ambulance-chasing lawyers and the play-it-safe judges is that we've got to the point where we've lost our operational capability to do tactical questioning. That in itself brings risks to the lives of the people we deploy. Yes, and as I, Robert Spencer, have said before, many people in Britain, as their country collapses into chaos and civil war, will congratulate themselves that they were never for a moment racist." And now that they never for a moment were rude to a jihad terror suspect. Don't yell at terrorist suspects, soldiers told by Robert Mendick and Tim Ross, The Telegraph, December 13th, 2014. British soldiers have lost their capability to interrogate terrorist insurgents because of the strict new rules on questioning that even ban shouting in captives' ears, military chiefs have warned. The rules, detailed in court papers obtained by The Telegraph, also prevent military intelligence officers from banging their fists on tables or walls or using insulting words when interrogating a suspect. The regulations replaced a previous policy that had to be withdrawn after a series of legal challenges and the death in custody of Baha Musa, an Iraqi detainee in Basra. But there is growing disquiet within the ranks that the latest guidelines, officially called Challenge Direct, are so stringent that it makes interrogation pointless. There is also concern that the rules can be so easily breached, especially given the pressure under which soldiers are operating, that military personnel will be left exposed to legal claims and possible disciplinary action. There was global condemnation last week when a Senate report in the United States disclosed how the CIA had systematically tortured detainees in the wake of a September 11th attacks. Despite this, British military chiefs fear the current restrictions on army interrogators are hindering the gathering of information. They insist interrogations can be vital in thwarting future terrorist attacks and in combating insurgents in hostile environments. Colonel Tim Collins, who made a celebrated eve of battle speech during the Iraqi war and now runs a private security company with expertise in intelligence gathering, said, "Since I was serving, the rules on interrogations have been tightened up because of the lawyers. We, the military, are no longer able to carry out tactical questioning. The effect of the ambulance-chasing lawyers and the play-it-safe judge is that we've got to the point where we have lost our operational capability to do tactical questioning. That in itself brings risks to the lives of the people we deploy. These insurgents are not nice people. These are criminals. They behead people. They keep sex slaves. They are not normal people." Lord West, the former Sea Lord and National Security Advisor, said, "We have gone too far in letting people take us to court. While these insurgents are chopping people's heads off and raping women, the idea they can take us to court because somebody shouted at them is ridiculous." World at 8. Well, you know the World at 8's view of these ridiculous grovelling efforts to appease the Saudis, Qataris and oil. But all terrorist suspects should be grateful we, or the US, don't bring in the Taliban, ISIS or Al-Qaeda with a rusty sword and a mobile phone for a selfie. The idea of bringing in the press or having evidence is just so wrong on every level. We're treating these terrorists like we do their Muslim sexual grooming counterparts, with a slap on the wrist. Leads cabbies to be trained to help spot children at risk of sex exploitation. Taxi drivers and private hire operators in a Yorkshire city are to undergo training to help spot children who are at risk of being sexually exploited. The training, which is expected to be rolled out from February, will see drivers in Leeds receive safeguarding training and advice in a bid to keep youngsters away from potential predators. The announcement in the wake of the child sex exploitation scandal in Rotherham, after Professor Alexis Jay's independent inquiry identified as many as 1,400 victims in the town. The report highlighted significant concerns that taxi and private hire vehicles have been used to move victims of sexual exploitation around the town and to other cities. Jane Held, the independent chairwoman of the Leeds Safeguarding Children Board, said, "Protecting children and young people from any risk remains a top priority for the Council. Child sexual exploitation, CSE, is an extremely complex issue, which means that it is not a straightforward challenge to address. Perpetrators will often go to extremes to commit these offences, so it's vital that we consider all avenues to best protect those who may be at risk. As part of our ongoing review into safeguarding controls in taxi and private hire licensing, we are updated the safeguarding training currently provided to licensed operators, drivers and taxi escorts. A safeguarding awareness course is being developed to help individuals identify and have a greater awareness of the issues of CSE and trafficking. Work is also taking place in Leeds to understand how to improve safeguarding intelligence and share it between police licensing and other agencies." I'm sorry. World at 8. What is wrong here? Weren't many of those convicted of child sexual exploitation taxi drivers? Where is the main point of this complex issue not? Muslims, and they know exactly what they're doing, as they've been doing it and getting away with it for donkey's years in taxis. European news. Spain, Madrid's Omar Mosque and Islamic Culture Centre was an ISIS jihadi recruitment hub. The cafeteria of Madrid's M30 mosque was the base of a network that recruited jihadists to fight for the terror group ISIS in Syria, a Spanish judge said on Thursday. The terror network, allegedly headed up by ex-Guantanamo Bay prisoner Larkan Ikrasian, used the mosque, Madrid's largest, as its centre of operations. National Court Judge Pablo Ruz said in a ruling as he processed 15 members of the gang dismantled in June. In a 49-page report, Ruz outlined the activities of the group, which is thought to have been in operation since 2011 and to have operated a training camp near the Spanish city of Avila. The group, known by its members as the Al-Andalus Brigade, a reference to the Islamic-controlled area of Spain in the Middle Ages, left a trail of evidence including paperwork, videos and social media content outlining how they operated. One such example is that of Hisham Shantouf, who joined ISIS in the autumn of 2013. This young man started attending the M30 mosque in 2010 and became radicalised after contact with a cell led by Iqasrian. He went on to become an imam at the Junquera de Henares Mosque in Spain's Guadalajara Mosque. Several Islamist extremist groups are threatening the area, including jihadists from Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, who are active in Algeria and remain a major problem for Morocco. World at 8. History repeating itself yet again. What does it take for Europe to wake up and smell the halal? Islamic extremists use criminal gangs to enforce religious Sharia laws in Danish ghettos. Islamic extremism is becoming increasingly violent in Europe. If we do not stop them effectively, where will it end? Immigrant gangs is Danish media's euphemism for Muslim gangs. Islamic extremists use immigrant gangs to enforce religious Sharia laws in residential areas throughout Denmark. The unholy alliance between religious extremists and hardcore criminals in residential areas where especially younger people are being forced to behave in certain ways and women are forced to dress in particular ways. Gang members typically support individual extremist imams and mosques with a strict interpretation of Islam. In several areas where we see the fundamentalists are supported by the gangs, people are more afraid of the extremists when they are backed by gang members. This can be seen, for example, in Chinburg. The consequence is that people do not dare to stand up against the extremists because they know they get beaten up by hardened criminals. National Police Research Centre (NEC), which monitors gang activity at home, confirms that the gangs are flirting with religious environments. We have reports that some of the gangs begin to show signs of a form of religious radicalisation, and it is a dangerous cocktail, so it's something we are aware of. World at 8. Well, without sounding like a religious hate fanatic, or rather like a reversed Chowdhury, I'm so glad that the authorities are aware. That must make everyone feel safe in those ever-growing areas of Sharia takeover, mustn't it? Merkel condemns racism as Dresden anti-Islam marches grow. Chancellor Angela Merkel on Friday condemned anti-Muslim demonstrations centred on the eastern city of Dresden, saying there was no place in Germany for hatred of Muslims or any other minority. In a speech at a party congress of her Bavarian allies in Nuremberg, Merkel also denounced an attack on buildings in a nearby town being turned into refuge for asylum seekers. The structures were set on fire and daubed with swastikas. It is unbearable when homes of asylum seekers are defiled, when people try to make radical slogans, Merkel said, adding that everyone coming to Germany had the right to be treated decently. Earlier on Friday, Merkel's spokeswoman Christiane Wirtz said, "In the name of the government and the Chancellor, I can say quite clearly that there is no place in Germany for religious hatred, no matter which religion people belong to." There is no place for Islamophobia, anti-Semitism or any form of xenophobia or racism, Wirtz said of the growing Monday evening marches in Dresden under the motto Pegida, standing for Patriotic Europeans Against the Islamization of the West. Public expressions of anti-immigrant sentiment are largely taboo in mainstream German politics because of the Nazis' mass murder of Jews and other groups in the Holocaust. Merkel argues that Germany needs immigrants to avoid a demographic crisis. But local officials say they are struggling to cope with the largest number of asylum seekers in Europe, with net immigration at its highest level in 2 decades. A backlash is being felt. This week Merkel's Conservatives debating banning the burqa, the full body covering worn by some Muslim women, and her Bavarian allies had to drop a proposal to oblige immigrants to speak German at home. The latest Pegida march on Monday drew up to 10,000 people and almost as many counter-demonstrations. The organisers, who began 2 months ago with a few hundred people, say they are not against immigrants but want to protest against Islamic extremism and the influx of asylum seekers. Interior Minister Thomas de la Maizière said not all the marchers were racist, and they included some who were expressing their fears about the challenges of the times. Dresden is the site of Germany's biggest annual neo-Nazi march on the anniversary of World War II bombings. German officials are alarmed at the rise in both anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic sentiment. This year has seen right-wingers join forces with football hooligans against Salafist Muslims and a rise in attacks on Jews linked to the Middle East crisis. World at 8. Unbearable. Merkel doesn't have to live, work or bring up children even near these areas. Proof of the pudding is in the eating. She and her toadying stupid pals should live there for 1 week incognito and see what indigenous Germans have to live with. Much nastier and more intrusive than the Jews ever were. So wake up before it's too late. World News. Pakistan arrests suspected South Asian Al-Qaeda commander. Pakistani authorities have arrested a man they describe as an important commander in Al-Qaeda's newly created South Asian wing, police told Reuters on Friday. Police arrested Shahid Usman in his mid-30s and 4 others in the southern city of Karachi late on Thursday. They also seized weapons and 22 pounds of explosives. Al-Qaeda's new South Asia wing, Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, tried to hijack a Pakistani Navy ship in September this year, a few days after the group had announced its formation. Police say Usman is the head of the Al-Qaeda wing in Karachi, a steamy port city of 18 million people, and was planning more attacks there. He is the Karachi chief of Al-Qaeda's newly formed wing, working under the setup of Asim Umar, the South Asia chief of Al-Qaeda, a senior official at the police counter-terrorism unit said. The official said Usman lived in Defence, a wealthy neighbourhood, and owned a car parts dealership in one of the city's most expensive commercial areas. Unlike the usual militant profile, Usman comes from an affluent background, the police officer said. Officer said Usman was previously associated with the outlawed Harkat al-Jihad al-Islami militant group, whose operational commander Ilyas Kashmiri was killed in the US drone strike in 2011 near the Afghan border. Usman had received training in Afghanistan, the police officer quoted. Al-Qaeda announced the formation of its South Asian wing on September the 4th, with Al-Qaeda chief Amyan al-Zawahiri promising to spread holy war across South Asia, home to more than 400 million Muslims. Analysts say the move is part of al-Qaeda's plan to take advantage of the planned withdrawal of US-led forces from Afghanistan and boost its influence in the region. The new al-Qaeda wing may also be an attempt to grab back the initiative from the Islamic State militant group that was expelled from al-Qaeda for its brutal tactics and which now holds parts of Iraq and Syria. Pakistani militants say envoys from the Islamic State are trying to make contacts in the region. Usman's arrest followed the reported killings of 2 senior al-Qaeda leaders in Pakistan this month. World at 8, and of course they don't have the problem over there of being outbred by Europeans, do they? So despite all the millions being fed into that country, pounds that is, Sharia law will rule within a short time. Do the math. Australia, Islamic terrorism threat forces Sydney to ban Christmas decorations at train stations. Muslim terrorists have succeeded in stealing Christmas joy from Sydney's train travellers. The traditional Yuletide tinsel, baubles and bunting that normally greet commuters at the city's busiest stations have been banned this year because the nation is on a high terror alert. Colourful decorations, fake gifts and small blow-up of Santas are being replaced with simple posters containing just one of 3 phrases: Merry Christmas, Season's Greetings or Happy Holidays. With the country on a high terrorist alert, you can't have Christmas stuff like wrap boxes lying around all over the place. It makes it more difficult for security staff to check the public areas at stations for suspicious items, an LU government source said. It's understood Sydney's trains bosses have told staff there are to be no Christmas decorations in station concourses and platforms. But Christmas trees, candy canes, angels and stockings will be allowed in staff areas, including lunchrooms and back offices away from the public. A station assistant at Town Hall Station who asked not to be named told the Daily Telegraph he and his colleagues were surprised no decorations had been put up with Christmas Day just a little more than 2 weeks away. Back in September, the federal government raised the national terrorism alert level from medium to high, based on advice from security and intelligence agencies, including the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation. A high alert means a terrorist attack is likely. At the time, Prime Minister Tony Abbott said there were raised concerns about the increasing number of Australians working with, connected to or being inspired by terrorist organisations such as Islamic State, Jabhat al-Nusra and al-Qaeda. World at 8, all I can say is that if the Anzacs had shown this amount of laziness and stupidity during the First World War, then we would all be speaking German and there would not have been a Second World War. Australian authorities called for calm as Sydney rocked by hostage crisis. Australian authorities called for calm on Monday as they negotiated with a gunman brandishing a black Islamic flag who is holding a number of people hostage in a cafe at the heart of Sydney's business district. In dramatic scenes captured on live television, 5 hostages escaped in mid-afternoon from the Lindt Chocolate Cafe in an incident that has sparked fears that it is a jihadist attack on Australian soil. Andrew Scipione, New South Wales Police Commissioner, said the police were responding in a manner consistent with a terrorist event, but added that there was no evidence that any of the hostages had been hurt. He urged the community to remain calm and continue to go about their daily business while avoiding the immediate area. Clearly, reprisal attacks are something that should not happen, he said. Police authorities said they had engaged the gunman in negotiations and would work throughout the night to try and bring the siege to a peaceful conclusion. They would not confirm reports in local media that up to 15 hostages are still in the cafe and asked media outlets not to report details of the gunman's demands, which have been carried on social media websites. World at 8. Negotiate, negotiate. I'm sounding like a Dalek. Shoot the buggers, matey. Thought for the day. The Anti-Social Brigade. The one thing amongst many things that have changed not for the better is the telling fact that as a country and a people we are all more housebound than our parents or grandparents ever were. Even in the slums pre-war, old people sat outside and talked, kids played in the street with a relatively safe eye on them, and ordinary people walked about gossiping, shopping or even getting up to mischief. Perish the thought now. I'm struck with just how empty our villages, small towns and larger towns and cities are. In the early 80s it was not unusual to see young mums with prams, older women doing the shopping and the odd retired person walking around in non-working hours. And then in the late 80s and early 90s it became apparent that it was a working population surrounding those towns, and villages and the shops only came to life during lunch hours and Saturdays. Now everywhere is dead during the daytime and pretty dead at night, and still not bulging at the seams even before Christmas, which is still our main Christian holiday. So what's happened? My husband had his rehabilitation near Alton on Tuesdays, and he drops me off and I walk around and have a coffee till he's finished. So I've been making notes on this small but vibrant town as it once was. I was speaking to an Indian running the local photocopy and stationery shop and shutting down last week. That will leave just one newspaper and sweet shop on the high street, vying with the takeaways and the second-hand shops which breed like no tomorrow. He was saying that soon there'll be no real high street shopping and England will cease to be a nation of shopkeepers. He was of course right, and with the greatest and cleverest social engineering programme taking place in this country, we will soon have a country which is just a nation of foreign parasites using the web. I am a proud mother of 3. The first 2 are products of the new era of non-communication and, apart from work, seem to love being housebound. My youngest is slightly different and younger, but still prone to that new religion. Large companies now allow their workers to work from home and indeed encourage it. Then they don't have to pay for large buildings, coffee machines, canteens or even keep stationery, and of course the number of staff being made redundant closely matches those allowed to stay on under the new conditions of work. That would explain why there are huge new office buildings simply lying empty. Many blue chip companies favour the home worker, as all they need is a computer, tablet, mobile phone or Wi-Fi, or probably all those and more. All you need to ply your trade, whatever that might be, on the web is a warehouse or even a private house and delivery or postal facilities. And one of the people who wanted our large house in Surrey were a Muslim family who were going to operate a lighting shop on the web out of the ground floor, so I didn't sell to them. But the establishment doesn't want us to live our lives as before. They don't want shops on high streets, whatever they may say. They want huge supermarkets built well out of towns so that people have to have cars to even live a fairly normal life. Schools too are well out of the way and kids don't walk because they're not encouraged to by their parents, who see rapists on every corner. Our world, whilst apparently growing larger in a sense, is actually getting smaller as we are relying on technology for everything, but the reasoning behind it is even more sinister, even allowing for progress and money making. That reason is man is being forced to look inward and ignore what is going on in his own country. And what better way is that than denying him any form of contact with fellow men? You tell me. A man can live on his own or with a family. He can work from home. His wife can work from home or go to an office. The baby will be looked after by a creche and the kids can come back to either a wife or husband or nothing. They will go by car to a large mall. They won't know anyone or communicate. Then they will go home with their purchases, if possible, or go to the web and buy stuff and have it delivered. They will not let go their mobile phones, on which is the sum total of their friends in the world, and I mean in the world and not on their doorsteps. The parents will do tablets and TV games and the TV. The garden will be picture perfect by B&Q, as will the home. They will have little contact with any extended or actual family, as they will have moved so much around the country it doesn't matter anymore, and there's always the phone or the computer. Now that scenario is not a wealthy family, it's just middle class and working. The establishment encourages working mothers, but not working fathers, as that would ruin the anti-nuclear family brigade. Single mothers of every ethnicity producing kids from varying fathers of every ethnicity is also very desirable. Disabled and homosexuals are also preferential to anyone of fairly normal desires who may be over the hill. If you are over the hill, you are a parasite who will sap the juice from anyone who has a job and a pension. Beware. As the saying goes, today they came for me, but tomorrow they'll come for you. So despite the blatherings of the anti-racists, the diversity brigade, the Marxists and the liberal lovies, we Indigenous are becoming virtually extinct in our own time. And this is what the powers that be want. They do not want a free-thinking, intercommunicable and educated population. And they certainly do not want our young to be in that category either. Thence the ridiculous films and series on the chosen one, magical or superhuman powers, or other politically correct multicoloured crap which many actually believe is true history or stories. This does not apply to the millions of Muslims and other ethnics. They stick to their way of life from their homelands. Work, making money, arranged marriages and family all defy the seemingly white-only social engineering taking place here and now. Take away the means of meeting partners for both sexes in real life. Take away the pubs, the hub of Britishness for hundreds of years. Take away social interaction, shops you can walk around, high streets which contain shops you grow to know and use, libraries, swimming baths and more. Put it all on a screen and make that screen available to all ages. So it has to be heavily monitored, and you frankly do not have the freedom that existed before the First World War. British freedom is just about a motherboard or lorry load away from not existing at all, and no one will even know it, let alone be allowed to comment on it. Look around. It is our Christian festival of the birth of Jesus. What do you see? Nothing. Simply nothing. We should all be ashamed of allowing this to happen to us and our kith and kin. And finally, 2 for 1 Day Monday. Bets at the nursing home. 3 mischievous old grandmas were sitting on a bench outside the nursing home when an old grandpa walked by. One of the old grandmas yelled out, "Hey, we bet we can tell exactly how old you are." The old man said, "There's no way you can guess my age." One of the grandmas said, "Sure we can. Just drop your pants and we can tell your exact age." Embarrassed but anxious to prove they couldn't do it, he dropped his drawers. The grandmas asked him to first turn around a couple of times and then jump up and down several times. Determined to prove them wrong, he did it. Then they all said in unison, "You're 87 years old." Standing with his pants down round his ankles, the old gent asked, "How in the world did you guess my age?" Slapping their knees, high-fiving and grinning from ear to ear, the 3 old ladies happily crowed, "We were at your birthday party yesterday." And a fleeing Hamas terrorist, desperate for water, was plodding through the Negev desert when he saw something far off in the distance. Hoping to find water, he hurried towards the mirage, only to find a very frail little old Jewish man standing at a small makeshift display rack selling ties. The Hamas terrorist asked, "Do you have water?" The Jewish man replied, "I have no water. Would you like to buy a tie? They're only $5. The terrorist shouted hysterically, "Idiot infidel! I do not need such an overpriced Western adornment. I spit on your ties. I need water." "Sorry, I have none. Just ties, pure silk, and only $5. "Pah! A curse on your ties. I should wrap one round your scrawny little neck and choke the life out of you, but I must conserve my energy and find water." "OK," said the little old Jewish man. "It doesn't matter that you don't want to buy a tie from me, or that you hate me, or threaten my life and call me infidel. I will show you that I'm bigger than any of that. If you continue over that hill to the east for about 2 miles, you'll find a restaurant. It has the finest food and all the ice-cold water you need. Go in peace." Cursing him again, the desperate Hamas terrorist staggered away over the hill. Several hours later he crawled back, almost dead, and gasped, "They won't let me in without a tie." You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night. As Dresden anti-Islam marches grow, Pakistan arrests suspected South Asian Al-Qaeda commander, Australian authorities call for calm as Sydney rocked by hostage crisis, Thought for the Day, the Anti-Social Brigade, and finally 2 for 1 Day Monday. UK News. Soldiers told not to yell at or use insulting words with terror suspects. Robert Spencer of Jihad Watch writes, "The effect of the ambulance-chasing lawyers and the play-it-safe judges is that we've got to the point where we've lost our operational capability to do tactical questioning. That in itself brings risks to the lives of the people we deploy. Yes, and as I, Robert Spencer, have said before, many people in Britain, as their country collapses into chaos and civil war, will congratulate themselves that they were never for a moment racist." And now that they're concerned that the rules can be so easily breached, especially given the pressure under which soldiers are operating, that military personnel will be left exposed to legal claims and possible disciplinary action. There was global condemnation last week when a Senate report in the United States disclosed how the CIA had systematically tortured detainees in the wake of a September 11th attacks. Despite this, British military chiefs fear the current restrictions on army interrogators are hindering the gathering of information. They insist interrogations can be vital in thwarting future terrorist attacks and in combating insurgents in hostile environments. Colonel Tim Collins, who made a celebrated eve of battle speech during the Iraqi war and now runs a private security company with expertise in intelligence gathering, said, "Since I was serving, the rules on interrogations have been tightened up because of the lawyers. We, the military, are no longer able to carry out tactical questioning. We never for a moment were rude to a jihad terror suspect." "Don't yell at terrorist suspects," soldiers told by Robert Mendick and Tim Ross, The Telegraph, December 13th, 2014. British soldiers have lost their capability to interrogate terrorist insurgents because of the strict new rules on questioning that even ban shouting in captives' ears, military chiefs have warned. The rules, detailed in court papers obtained by The Telegraph, also prevent military intelligence officers from banging their fists on tables or walls or using insulting words when interrogating a suspect. The regulations replaced a previous policy that had to be withdrawn after a series of legal challenges and the death in custody of Baha Musa, an Iraqi detainee in Basra. But there is growing disquiet within the ranks that the latest guidelines, officially called Challenge Direct, are so stringent that it makes interrogation pointless. There's also the effect of the ambulance chasing lawyers and the play it safe judge is that we've got to the point where we have lost our operational capability to do tactical questioning. That in itself brings risks to the lives of the people we deploy. These insurgents are not nice people. These are criminals. They behead people. They keep sex slaves. They are not normal people. Lord West, the former Sea Lord and National Security Advisor, said, "We have gone too far in letting people take us to court. While these insurgents are chopping people's heads off and raping women, the idea they can take us to court because somebody shouted at them is ridiculous." World at 8. Well, you know the World at 8's view of these ridiculous grovelling efforts to appease the Saudis, Qataris and oil. But all terrorist suspects should be grateful we, or the US, don't bring in the Taliban, ISIS or Al-Qaeda with a rusty sword.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday 15th of December 2014. Soldiers told not to yell at or use insulting words with terror suspects. Durr leads cabbies to be trained to help spot children at risk of sex exploitation. Spain, Madrid's Omar Mosque and Islamic Culture Centre was an ISIS jihadi recruitment hub. Islamic extremists use criminal gangs to enforce religious Sharia laws in Danish ghettos. Merkel condemns racism